Hello, and welcome to the South Coast Artists Index, where artists, performers, and writers, as well as curators, directors, and supporters, anyone with ties to the creative community, drops by to introduce themselves to you. We'll talk about their beginnings, their vision, their passion, and so much more. The South Coast Artists Index podcast is brought to you in part by Heavenly Spirits, who invites you to celebrate the art of life and creative communities everywhere.
This is Ron Fortier with our second podcast live from Play Arcade, and we're here in partnership with AHA, and AHA's theme is Kids Rule. And with us, currently, we have other guests coming between now and the end of this podcast. I'm going to go the way I always go. I'm going to have our guests introduce themselves and spell their names.
All right. So I am Roger Andrews. That's ROGERANDREWS. I almost forgot how to spell my last name. It's crazy. I'm sure I'm not the first, right?
Some people would just go blank. All
right. Yeah, that's right. And with me is...
My name is Ashlianna Felix. Everybody calls me Ash. That's ASHLIANNAFELIX. Long name.
Long name.
So Felix is a bastardized version of Felix, which is Portuguese.
I am Portuguese, yes.
Yeah. I went to school with a guy. You know, they say that customs never change people's names, but they wrote them down as they heard them. And you don't pronounce Felix in Portuguese. You pronounce it Fels.
Well, my last name is made up. Most Portuguese people make up their last names upon coming over here.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, strong guess, Ron. Portuguese person in New Bedford. Strong guess on that one. I appreciate that.
I mean, if you come, the islands have a different tradition from the mainland too.
I'm from Terceira.
Okay. I love Terceira. I always tell people, if you're going to go fly to Portugal, do the one stop, land in Terceira Lagos, and you're not going to know what happened until you get to Portela in Lisbon, the main airport, and you go through customs. They're like, no, you already went through customs. Like, where? In Terceira. That was customs? Either that or it's like 2.5 hours kicking your bags in the line.
That sounds more like Boston. That's what Boston's like. Yeah, right?
Yeah. So this whole concept of Kids Rule, and you and I have discussed this before about you and I both believe that there's not enough art available to kids on a daily basis, right?
No, not nearly enough.
I mean, we've got the comprehensive high school, for example, just to bring it to that level. We've got the vocational high school, which is tremendous. I mean, it's one of the best in the States. But we got that middle gap of visual and performing arts that I would, and I've been pounding on this drum for a long time. I'd love to be able to see something like that happen. But in the meantime, there are people like you.
Right.
So why don't you let everybody know a little bit about your background? And I don't think I ever asked you what got you into Sketchy GO, ichie, because, I mean, you already had a successful career. You're pretty much like an icon.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, just saying that you worked at Hasbro, for example, is enough to impress a lot of people.
All right. Yeah. That's it's funny. The Hasbro thing has been my calling card. Hasbro and Disney and DreamWorks and all these companies that I work for. But the reality is, I'm just a guy who's like a commercial artist. I was doing work for advertising agencies long before I ever got into the toy and game industry. And so, I almost consider myself like a glorified storyboard artist or a concept artist. That's really all I am and all I do. I just got fortunate to do this fun, pop culture-y, cartoony, comic booky art. And it's funny that Hasbro is my calling card in that I've been working with them since probably the year 2000. And I've been so blessed and so fortunate to be able to do these sort of licensed brands. And I think that is ahead of me. That's iconic, not necessarily me as an artist, because let's face it, as being a commercial artist, our names aren't exactly attached to the art that gets produced or disseminated, right? And so, when you say my name is, nobody knows who Roger Andrews is, I don't think. You know, they know I can't spell my last name, but that's all they know.
Well, it's funny you should mention that because one of the, Jeff and I have all these plans, and we're trying to document the legacies of all the artists, in the South Coast from as far back as we can go to the present. And one of the areas that I want to do is because that's where I came from. That was my bread and butter because you couldn't make money as a painter around here. And there were some people who were successful, but not everybody could do it. And I'm thinking about the old radio guys, the guys used to do the voiceovers and write the scripts, and the gentleman who hired me to work at Moore and Slater advertising agency, or Ray Slater, he was a phenomenal marker artist and a concept artist. And all of those, those ads that you see, if you do genealogy or you're looking something up in microfilm in the newspapers and you're scrolling through that, you see some of these ads and you're like, whoa! I mean, these, they were designed to sell.
Exactly. In fact, many of those guys, a lot of the old time guys, they could draw as well or greater than I could coming out of art school. Yeah. I was amazed by that. Yeah. And these were writers. Yeah. And the art directors, they were phenomenal. And I can see them, if you're a product of, coming up in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, you were still hand rendering everything, which is amazing. It was an amazing thing to see, like people hand rendering, and they would pass it on to me to create the storyboard or to create the comp ad. Right. That was going to go in a magazine, if people can remember what a magazine is. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And they would hand me these loose sketches. I was like, I guess, what do you want me to color these? I mean, these are so phenomenal, right?
Well, right now, it's not a chauvinistic thing because that's pretty much the average. When I was, towards the tail end of the 40 years, it was a young woman who just got out of school who knew how to run Adobe. They gave her some money, and this person was doing what took a team of 6 people to do. Because there was the concept artist, there was the layout artist, there was the comp artist, there was the mechanical artist, okay? And then you had the writers, and then you had the graphics people, okay? So, and Jeff, when I first started working with Jeff, and he was starting up his advertising business, and I would be talking about copy, and he'd be looking at me like, what's copy? I said, you guys call it text. It's youngsters. Copy. There's only 2 things, art and copy. Right. Yeah. Right? And it's gone. And then, you see a lot of mistakes in ads now because there's only that one set of eyes. Yep. You don't have all these people, checking every single layer of it. I've got all my layouts. We used to use 2 types of paper. It's probably not politically correct, but that's what they called it. There was yellow trash, which was flimsy, or some people just called it flimsy, yellow flimsy. Right. It came in a roll. It was tracing paper, almost it was tracing paper, but it was a newsprint. It was very crepey, and that was the original sketches you started doing. Then, when the art director blessed it, you moved up to the next thing, which is now the white trash. Yeah. Right. And then you tightened that up, and then that went to the comp artist, who comped it up, and
guess what? That was my role in the. That was my role in the whole the chain. That was my link in the chain. That was the comp artist. That was the guy to actually give it some polish.
Yeah. And make the pows and the bangs. Yeah. I remember my first big job interview was at Kramer Trowbridge. No, it was Connor. Connor Cosmopolis. Because they were all like law firms. Yeah. Connor's Cosmopolis and another name. And the art director's name, honest to God, I'll never forget the man's name. The man, period. His name was Ron Reagan.
Ron Reagan.
And he looked at me and he went, and he sort of like dropped his head and he's like, okay, I've been where you are. I know what you're going through, but you got to make me a promise if I'm going to talk to you. I said, what's that promise? When you get to be an art director or creative director like me, you're going to have this conversation with some young person. And that's all I ask of you. So then he looked at all my comps and, back in school, I mean, we did like these incredible things. I mean, like they were like, looked like real ads and stuff like that. And he went, why the hell did they do that? Why did they make you guys do that? Okay, you're technically proficient. You can handle an X-Acto. I don't give a shit. You got a sketchbook? I want to see your sketchbook. I want to see all your stupid ideas. I want to see all the ones that will never make it. because I want to see how your brain works.
Wow.
And I remember those kinds of things, you know?
You know what's so funny? Then that leads me directly to Sketchy GO ichie.
Okay.
Right? That's it.
Yep.
For me, and Ash, hopefully you agree, it's the sketch. It's the, that's where you're pulling the magic out of. That initial drawing, that sort of, that spark of creativity, that first sketch, that first stage. And that's, you know, the essence. I think my whole career is kind of built on that. Being that guy that takes a blank page, and we talked about this earlier, turns that into something hopefully beautiful, or at least effective to selling a product. And so Sketchy GO ichie is that. That's like the spark, the creativity, the sort of staying in that mode. That necessary. Listen, we spend a lot of time polishing stuff up as well. We also do a lot of like really strong visual gymnastics to make things look beautiful in the end. But to be honestly, the essence, the storytelling is in the initial sketch. And so I was in the same boat as you coming out of art school. When I went though, my art school was like, it wasn't a traditional art school, Butera School of Art. It was more of like a commercial art school.
Oh, yeah. You don't even hear that term anymore.
Yeah, right? I mean, it trades. In fact, it was a trade school.
It was a trade school, yeah.
Right, yeah. So I don't have a degree. I have a certificate.
Yep.
You know?
Interesting.
It was a certificate school. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I don't have a degree. I don't have a master's. I don't have anything in art. I'm just kind of a guy who likes to draw. And so the school, what they did is they prepared us for that, for actually going into interviews. And I brought sketches. It wasn't just all the really polished stuff in my portfolio. Yeah. By the way, we had to carry a portfolio case.
Oh my God!
I had to do that too.
You did too. All right, you're just in the right age.
It was 2 feet by 3 feet.
In the subways, trying to get in while having it hang out, or trying to get into an elevator
on a windy day. You just blow across the campus.
All of a sudden, your arm is up in the air like this, right? You're gonna launch up. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, if you had a skateboard, you could have used it as a sail.
Oh my God! Yeah.
And that was the. But to your point, I brought sketches with me. And so they saw that I could, I was a storyteller with the sketches. And I could concept. That's really all they care about. Yeah. I could have drawn stick figures as long as I could convey a story.
Visual narratives. Because don't forget, back in those days, the photographer was, you had two kinds of photographers. The ones that did what the comp artist said had to be done, or the photographer who was the concept guy to begin with. And you hired this guy because you knew what this guy was going to lay out. You just have to say, this is the vibe, blah, blah, blah. This guy, I worked with this guy named Bruno Lintz. He was...
Was this out of Boston?
No, he was around here. He ran away. He ran away from Boston. His name was Bruno Lintz, and he was a German Brazilian.
Okay.
So I got a funny feeling his family were like the boys from Brazil.
Okay, all right,
Right? This guy did not use sticks, tripods. He didn't use flashes. He could photograph women, fashion models. You'd never see him bring the camera up to his face or his eye. He would just bang off these shots that were just like, oh my God.
And he composed the shot.
He composed the shot. He knew where the lens was at all time, like in his brain. It was almost like he had a third eye.
Wow.
And, so you had those kind of guys. And then we're talking about sketching. I've been looking for a couple of people to see, how they've been. And, we're all getting old and up there in age. Debbie Healy, who I worked with at the Office of Historic Preservation, I just found out she passed away in New Mexico. And I always wanted to ask her if she was related to a Milt Healy. Because if you went to White's of Westport back in the day, you see all these murals. The Priscilla Room and all that other stuff. Milt did those. But Milt also worked for Mars Bargain Land as a production artist. Actually, he was a sketch artist. And there was a gentleman of color named Tom McCann, I believe that was his name.
Okay.
Who ran
not to be
that
familiar,
department.
not to be associated with the shoes, isn't it? Tom McCann?
Well, I worked for Tom McCann for best-selling shoe.
Now that one you may not know about. Tom McCann shoes.
Yeah.
Never heard of those.
There you go. All right,
Yeah, he might really good pair of shoes for $4.
Yeah.
But anyway, and Milt would tell me his day would start off where Tom, he was the creative director. He'd walk up to where Milt's drawing board was, and there'd be like a cabaret, and he dropped this case of shoes. And what Milt had to do was, with pen and ink, sketch all of those shoes because they were for lino cuts. No halftones, because that was an expensive process. So that's why so many of those old ads were all pen and ink. And some of those pen and ink drawings were just phenomenal.
Yeah, but I mean, listen, we're all fans of like classic illustrators, and the reality is like their hand skills, their ability to draw was so unbelievably phenomenal because they were constantly rendering by hand, right? All the time, right? And despite the fact that we work digitally, everything we render is still hand drawn. Like literally, it's not. We're not photocomping. We're not photoshopping and manipulating.
Well, you know, Paula, she taught at Henry Ford in Detroit. Digital. She taught the history of design and I believe a couple of design courses. And then the digital age came, and we both remember, she and I, when all this 1.0 came out. So that was all keyboarding, you know, and mousing. Now she has one of those Apple pens. Yeah. And the control is phenomenal because that was like one of the big poo-poos from the traditional artists is like, you know, you just can't get that line quality. You just can't get that pressure.
You sure can now.
Yeah,
Pressure sensitivity is a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, I mean, Ash, it's like there's probably no medium that you can't replicate using your Apple Pencil.
Watercolor, charcoal, paint, ink.
Yeah, I mean, Ben Martinez, who was a former instructor at the Swain School, has been doing it for quite a long time. And when he's like on the train or whatever, when he's traveling to Europe, he does those sketches, and they're just like, you couldn't tell.
No, there's no distinguishable difference.
So let's turn it back to, because it's kids' rules. So let's turn it back to the kids.
Sure.
As an instructor, as a professional artist, and are you teaching it along with Roger?
My name is Ash. I am teaching alongside Roger.
Yeah. What are your experiences?
Shall I begin?
Go ahead,
Right.
you can start it.
So my direct experience is my alma mater. I taught at my alma mater after graduating, maybe only a few years after, which is really strange to be a student and a couple of years late teaching other kids what I learned. But I worked at the ad agency, and then I taught at Butera School of Art in the commercial art division for several years, maybe 2 or 3 or 4, I think. And then several years later, I got brought on to teach as a guest lecturer over at UMass Dartmouth in the CVPA. So in the illustration department.
That's where we met.
And that's where we met. In fact, to push the family tree along, I actually taught Ash. She was an illustration student. What year was that, actually?
I graduated in 2021.
She graduated in 2020. So I had her as a student and obviously identified that talent right then and there. I was like, I got to work with that person.
Was there any hangovers? I can't remember his first name, but it was Barry was his last name. Was he still hanging there?
No, Barry.
And then I think there was a couple of French.
Yeah, Jean-François.
Jean-François,
Yeah, Bruce Maddox is running it now, and trying to think of all the other old school people.
Zach Gialongo.
Zach Gialongo is kind of new school.
But I'm trying to think who is. Drawing a blank right now, but but Bruce is the hub. Right?
Yeah.
I think Bruce is the connection point. That's me. I dropped my phone. I don't know. It sounded like it sounded like somebody dropped a video game, one of the video games on somebody's head. Right? So Bruce Maddox, he is the absolute connection point for probably a lot of us.
Yep.
And he's awesome. What an awesome individual. He would be a great guest.
Yeah, I'd love to have him on the show. Yeah. I mean, but as a former instructor, there was always challenges with the younger generation because you would have the kid who would come in who was the golden child of their high school, and you had to break that person down like everybody. But this is from a fine arts background,
right?
And we're talking. I always used to tell my students, because that's how I learned. If your shoulder isn't sore at the end of the session, you're not doing it right.
You know what's so funny? I think that started to fade out in my era. So again, I went to art school and graduated in the 90s, the early 90s, so late 80s, early 90s. Mm-hmm. There was a transition point. I think there was a little much more softer approach that was happening at that point.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think that today's youth would be able to put up with with the kind of rigor that we had.
And colleges have to make money, right? So they want to make it inviting for everybody. And, you know, the people who have money, who think that art is the easy way to go, a lot of them enroll their kids into art programs in college.
Right. And I see your point, though. There were a few... how can I be polite? A few. I mean, I'll say it, a little more entitlement, a sense of entitlement with a few. Obviously, Ash is the exact opposite. Like, one of the things that really attracted to me her as an artist is like she is incredibly disciplined, hardworking, but then obviously creative. I mean, that's almost the default, right? You got to be creative, but she's so humble, right, and so on point. And there were a couple of her classmates that were also on that level. I think very, very humble and very, very talented as well. But there was a few that I had over the years that I was at UMass that were a little precious.
You know, a lot of those students that you bring up were fine arts majors first. We all came from Bristol Community College. We pursued fine arts as a group.
You mean the good kids, the strong ones?
Yes,
yeah.
The top 5 of the class.
Yep.
And we moved over to UMass Dartmouth, and they wouldn't put us in our junior year because they want that extra year for payment, you know? So we were really ahead of the game. We knew what we were doing when we came in the door.
Yeah, the maturity level was there. And you're right, there just wasn't there was no prima donna in any of that group. And I think there were a few, if I'm not mistaken, there were a few Voc Tech graduates too.
Yeah.
Yes, we got some New Bedford Voc grads.
And that's another thing too. The Voc Tech program has, I mean, Keith Francis is in there. Is Ty still teaching there?
Yeah.
I think when Ty came in, all of a sudden it became a really serious program, because prior to that, I think they were still stuck in the old-timey kind of stuff, you know, commercial art, which
the original version of commercial art, and then there was some fine arts as well that was brought in, which is obviously is wonderful. But again, for a commercial art program, I can only speak for myself, but I was really sort of motivated to be someone who was not a starving artist. I'll just say that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, see, that was the other thing about commercial art. That's why so many fine artists went into commercial art, because that was bread and butter. I mean, it was better than cooking in a restaurant, which I did, selling shoes, which I did. You know, it was a thing. But my other thing is like, what are young people really looking for when they enter into an art course or art program or art curriculum? What are they really, really looking for? Is that really a sense of fulfillment?
I think it depends on how young we're talking. I mean, at least for me, when I started getting old enough to want to pursue art as a career, I knew that there was a sense of magic associated with creativity, and I wanted to be able to produce that myself. And so I think it's like being able to catch the magic and then produce it yourself.
Right. And then and you're right. I mean, that's really relevant point. The age, it depends on the age. I mean, if you're talking like the younger kids in our program are 7, 8, 9, you know, so for them, it's just fun to draw, and they love to draw. You remember those days where it's just fun to just sit and draw?
Yeah.
And I think what the benefit, hopefully what we offer, is that like you can draw in this sort of environment where you get instruction and guidance, right? I think that's kind of the cool part of it. Like it's one thing to sit around all day and sketch in your sketchbook, but to be guided and to have some sort of like, to someone to bounce you know what it is, Ron? It's the ability to sort of to get feedback, right? Not microphone feedback from an instructor, from someone that can say, oh, this drawing of X looks cool, and this is why, and this is the things you can improve upon. To have that at an early age, I think is strong. And now I don't know if they're seeking it, but I feel like that's the benefit.
Well, there's also the magic of tips, hints, and tricks.
Yes.
I mean, I still remember Mal Oliveira. He was my one and only private painting instructor. He lived on Arch Street in Dartmouth. Mike Morris, the photographer out of Payden, that's his great uncle, I believe. When I found out that they were related. I mean, he had to come on the show and talk. Every time I get to the easel, that man is sitting, he's standing there next to me.
Huh.
It's the weirdest thing. I mean, because it really was about the tricks and the tips and the hints were not just contrived marks. They were about observation. Like every time I do a horizon, he would always tell me, if you look really, really close at the horizon, you're going to see a very thin, light line because you don't have the sky smashing into the ocean. You need to have that separation of light because that's going to give it more depth. And it was just a bunch of little things like that,
Yeah, those little, to have access. But here's the thing, though. You won't have access to that by yourself.
Yeah.
Right? And sure, you can go on YouTube and you can watch videos, but and by the way, I go on YouTube and I learn a lot from watching, so I'm not disparaging that at all.
Right. Yeah,
but for someone to draw something up on their iPad and show that to you, and you'd be able to say, hey, what if you did this?
Like the in-person interaction, there is something special about that.
Right.
I mean, in our class yesterday, there was a young man that was like, I want to talk to Roger. I have to show him something. And he got great
so
joy
proud.
in watching your interaction in person.
Right. And he was so proud of what he created. And here's the thing, to be able to make those adjustments, to have that ability to make those adjustments early or to feed them those tips and tricks early. How great would it have been to be a little guy, like a 9-year-old?
Yeah.
And to be able to take a class like what we put on?
Yep.
Like, could you imagine how, that would have been like an accelerant? It would have been like, nitrous oxide for your drawing because you're going to propel faster. You're going to get to the point where you're more confident drawing faster with instruction at a younger age. And it's like almost like sports. I think I made this analogy on the podcast.
Yeah.
It's like sports. Like if you get a lot of training and you get great coaching early on, you get naturally more confident shooting the ball or bunting or whatever you're doing in sports. I think that's part of hopefully what we can provide.
Again, it's an awareness. And the awareness on so many different levels. The awareness of touch, the awareness of sight, the awareness of, I tried developing. Well, I did develop it. It's just trying to launch it. It's the 70s Tibetan drawing, based. If you could take Nicolaides, which was the master when I was in fine arts program, and Betty Edwards, who became the new guru, drawing on the right side of the brain, and smashing those two together. And I was successful when I was teaching courses. I remember there was teaching at the old artworks, and there was an entourage of UMass Dartmouth fine arts professors who were getting a tour, and I had like 6th and 7th graders, and they were doing drawing, and the whole thing, the push, the pull, the whole experience. And one of the instructors, they all went through the room, and then one of the instructors came back and he went, "You're teaching them foundation?" Like, yeah. He's like, "Damn." I mean, they got it. I mean, they were drawing a pile of coat hangers. And once you get them to say, okay, don't look at all the damn coat hangers. You got to start
looking at the shapes.
Tearing it apart, putting it together. Look at the negative shapes and all that other stuff. And it is a very different way of life. It's a very different way to approach your observations. I mean, Adrian Teo, and I mentioned this seven times on my past podcasts, that Adrian said, everybody says that artists are really good. The art training helps you, makes you a better problem solver. Because
I say this all the time.
Right. Because in art, you solve a problem and you've created another one.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's the working the whole page over kind of thing, and so on and so forth.
Sure.
But he said, no, it's not just that. What an art program teaches you is about relationships.
Yeah, that's smart.
And then I borrowed a page from Robin Williams, not the Robin Williams, the comedian actor. Robin Williams at Arizona State, I think it was. And I always wondered, she did the Joshua trees. I think that was like one of the first things that she wrote. She was a graphic designer. And one of the I always wondered, who did she take off on the faculty for them to come up to her and say, you have to develop a course, art for non-artists.
Huh.
And she came up with a CRAP program, which is applicable to a lot of things.
Crap.
CRAP.
Okay.
Contrast, repetition, alignment, proximity. Once you see that in motion, you can't unsee it.
Right. Yeah. That's
So
a good way
yeah.
to see it. Yeah.
I mean, there are so many different. So, what does that have to do with anything? How does that help you put bread on the table? Because I think that's a parent's biggest worry. Oh, my daughter, she's really, really good, but I worry about her, how she's going to make a living. And it's like, I think that resistance, I don't know if you guys have noticed, is less now than it was maybe 10 years ago.
What would you say?
I like the idea in Okinawa, they believe that once you find your life purpose, like that's the whole point of living. And I think I resigned to that as well. It's like there's more to life than just how many dollars I have in my bank account. It's how I'm going about my life. And art teaches me to be mindful of everything, like the thing that I'm observing in order to draw, steps that I have to take to become the best version of myself in my position as an artist.
Right. And what's interesting, and I'll take it from a parent's perspective, right? Obviously, you want your children to survive, hopefully prosper, but to survive. And you're right. I do agree. I think it's lessened. I think when we were kids, there's probably a litany of folks, and we've heard this sort of anecdotal stories of like how like their dad or their mom or someone in their family said, no, you can't be an artist because there's no money in it.
I don't think that's gone anywhere. My parents were the same way. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I didn't realize that it was a profession until I was in my mid-20s.
That's true. Yeah. So I guess it exists, but I feel like it's not as intense. Maybe that might be how at least that's how I perceive it.
Yeah.
Because I feel like there's folks like, just a bit younger than me and a little bit older than me who have that story, that same tale of like, yeah, I always loved art. I always wanted to do art, but I can't because it's like, I got to become a police officer. I got to become, right? We talked about this before. Like that's just a part of, and I think I think it's lessened. But clearly, Ash, in your personal experience, like it's like, and here's the interesting thing, right? I don't know that there's that many like jobs in art, but there's a lot more careers in art. There's a lot of people who can manufacture a living in art, but in a more in a less structured way.
Well, one of the things I would tell students, this concept of portable skills. And what's portable skills? Well, back in the old days, and it's very chauvinistic because David Ogilvy, the American grandfather of advertising, which is odd because he was British.
Yeah.
He was a stove salesman. The whole concept of how do I get into advertising? And his famous reply was, "Can you type?"
Huh.
And women went insane. He said, "No, you don't understand. Okay, you go into the typing pool. That's like that was like one of the aortas or something of an advertising agency. You're typing all this copy, all these world famous writers and hacks, are all, so you're typing all this information and you're listening. And then someday you're gonna have the right moment where somebody comes into the typing pool and says, well, does anybody have a better idea? And that's your moment.
Oh, okay.
You can seize that moment. And the portable skills thing is, okay, bartenders, that bartending is a portable skill. Cooks, that's a portable skill. Commercial artists, that's a portable skill. And not only are they portable, you can pretty much set yourself up in your own business as well.
That's what I was trying to refer. That's what I was alluding to. Like all of us now are our own art LLCs.
Yeah.
Right.
I think nowadays something to keep in mind though is you have to be at least like like a master, jack of all trades, master of none.
Right.
Because I went to school for illustration, but I'm doing animation, illustration, design,
graphic design. Yeah. And also too, you have to be a salesperson.
Yep.
And a marketer.
Yeah. You gotta go out there and schlep your stuff.
And a social media manager and a content creator.
Right. So you are all these people, which tends to dampen your enthusiasm for doing your work because you have all this stuff. My studio mate at the University of Miami was Leon Rosenblatt. He was an internationally acclaimed illustrator. He did the illustration of Merlin on the Styx album. He did the Mobius albums, the Mobius strips. He did a whole bunch of stuff. He did, I don't know how many covers on the National Lampoon. And I'm saying internationally acclaimed. I mean, he got awards for it and stuff like that. The Society of American Illustrators. And he made a very, very good living in New York in 1 year alone. This is 1974. He made $50,000. Just going out there. And he was doing all of the pulp romances, where he would hire.
Was it Fabio? Did he have Fabio on?
At that time, I don't think Fabio was even known, but I do remember him saying he would hire a buxom woman and a muscly guy, and he said, and he's like, draped over his left arm, draped over his right arm, standing behind him, touching his shoulder. I mean, it was like all these rote. Things, and he could pound those things out, and he was making $300 a pop for Silhouette Publishing. Sure. And then, with the advent of digital, there was a point in time where illustrators were out of the market. Because, traditional illustrators. Because they were charging more money than the photographers were, and everybody thinks they are a photographer, right?
Right. Yeah.
So the market just keeps shifting and stuff. So getting back to kids, I remember when I worked for the superintendent of art, Ray Basalem, back in the 70s. And that was just when they changed over from classroom art instructors in the elementary schools to itinerant art instructors. I called them the bag ladies because they had a shopping cart and they had all their... And basically it was pretty horrible. It was very rote. Oh, we're going to do a sunset. Oh, it's Thanksgiving. We're going to do a turkey in the cornucopia. Oh, it's Christmas. We're going to do a tree in the sled. And it was more about entertainment or keeping them quiet than it was passing on any skill levels. Now, one of my friends in Miami, he still lives there, his wife, he married one of his students. His wife became the president that year of the Dade County Art Educators Association. And she invited me into this inner city middle school called Sheridan. I think it was Sheridan Junior High. And I'm like, I walked in there with kind of an attitude. I didn't want to hurt Lourdes's feelings, but I was just so heartbroken, disgusted with our education in school systems. When I walked in there, my jaw dropped. I mean, I was totally shocked. But she was a classroom instructor. And these are kids from that part of town who don't get a lot of joy in their life. And to see that sense of fulfillment, that sense of accomplishment was absolutely phenomenal.
I mean, ultimately, that's what it's about.
Yeah.
Right? There is the gift that we're hoping to pass on, right? Wouldn't you say? I mean, that sense of fulfillment, that sort of spark.
That can be provided to everybody. Any color, any income level, any age. Everybody can have access to this.
Yeah, and right to your point, it doesn't matter what neighborhood you're from. Right. It doesn't matter what community. If you can be all. It's an interesting level. Like art, as a whole, is the interesting leveler. Right. If you're an appreciator, if you appreciate art, you can come from any background. Right. I love that aspect of it. I love being. Don't you love being a part of that? Like being a part of that universe.
Taking away the whole forbidden nature, especially to the digital art, because it costs money to have the tools that you need in order to work in such a way.
It's just not oatmeal paper and ebony pencils.
Right. Yeah. Or like myself, drawn on the back of a placemat.
Yeah.
You know, where I don't have any access to paper or anything, but the crayons that they provide for you at the restaurant.
Right.
You know,
I still love the flat Crayolas, the ones that were flat on the bottom.
Yeah.
And the smell of a new box of Crayolas is still
absolutely.
But you know what? They will stand on your shoulders, which gives you immortality, because you will never die.
I see.
That thing, that love will go on.
Right. I feel like we're like almost like a caretaker to the flame. Right?
Yeah.
Right. We're passing that torch along, and we're keeping it lit, and we're passing it to the next generation for them. So hopefully, as you referred to earlier, right? Someone instructed you, I believe at the creative director at the ad agency, said, "Listen, one thing I'm asking you to do is pass this on."
Yep.
Well, right, we're taking that call.
Yeah.
And we're gonna pass it on.
Philip Guston, who went from a top tier, in art history lingo, a top tier ABEX. So he's a top tier abstract expressionist, who all of a sudden one night, I mean, his family had been murdered in Auschwitz. He had seen the civil rights thing, the Jim Crow South. And one night he was in a studio and he thought, how ridiculous. I mean, this is a successful painter. How ridiculous. I'm sitting here pondering, should I use a blue or should I use a red? And that's when, I don't know if you know about Philip Guston and how he evolved into a point where people are like, are you out of your freaking mind? What are you doing, right? But he just decided that that's something that he had to do. He had to show this hatred. He had to show this inhumanity. And that's what an artist does who's now teaching through their work. I mean, your art has to have a purpose. And as trite as it may seem that, okay, so you're producing these ads for shoes, that has a purpose.
Yeah, there's a purpose.
You're making somebody happy.
100%.
Right?
Now imagine that if you were doing that for a cartoon series, that's about to be launched. Imagine if you were doing that for a video game or a toy, And it's funny, Ron, I had that epiphany one day. Like, because again, it's easy, right, to kind of get wrapped up in your in the work, right? And we all do that. And matter of fact, in any walk of life, you kind of get wrapped up in the work, and you lose sight of the back end. Who is receiving whatever service you're providing? And when you stop and think about, like, we create images that actually bring people joy. Right? Think about that. Like, how potent is that?
Yeah.
Joyfulness. And more often than not, younger people and collectors, I guess older folks who are collectors, right, have a lot of joy that we generate. And I never, ever, ever take it for granted. In fact, it bolsters, and it gives me energy.
I mean, as a working artist, there's that sense of fulfillment. You are creating joy. I mean, look, some of the toys that you've designed and so on and so forth. I mean, they're classics now and such. And that's like, yeah, I did that. But as as an instructor, there's a completely different kind of emotion, because it's not voyeuristic. That's not the right term, but it kind of is. Because you're extending that vibe, that love, that craft, that vision that has been making you happy all of your life. And it's like a torch. You're passing that on to somebody else. So, and I've been really trying to go back to the theme of Kids Rule. What would you do if, this is like a Barbara Walters question.
That's right, yeah.
If I gave you a magic...
cry. I'm telling you, I'm not going to cry on this.
If I gave you a magic wand and told you only had one wish, but you had to spend that wish on elementary and secondary school art programs, what would you do?
You mean choosing between the two? Where would I spend that?
What would your wish be?
Either or, yeah. What would your wish be right across the board from K through 12?
I think I think middle school. I like that sort of that 11 and
The hormone hell stage of the.
I feel like right now, like a lot of the younger ones, it's in the joy zone. Like they just come in because it's fun, right? And they're getting to draw like a lot of their favorite characters, and we're teaching like again the tips and tricks, and so there's a gamified aspect to it. But there is a point, like you said, in the hormone zone where you start to like contemplate, like, what do I want to do for the future, right? There's a little inkling of it. Maybe not until high school does it start really get existential, but there's a point very early on, and I think I'd like to sneak in there and then almost upload this virus of like being creative, right? I want to upload that virus to in their hard drives. Like being creative as a career starts then, in my opinion, and it did for me. That's I can only speak from that perspective.
There's a program, I forgot where it's situated. It's in theater. August Wilson, who wrote Fences. I mean, he wrote some phenomenal damn plays. And they've got this thing where they take these kids from high schools who are in the drama club or whatever. They just do a reading, and it's like this year-long process. And they get these kids who have never acted ever in their entire lives. And they give them this craft, which is a dirty word. When I came from fine arts, it was like, oh, no, we don't use craft. right? Wow. But it's a craft. And to see these kids light up when they know they've got that audience in the palm of their hand, and they can make them cry, they can make them scream, and all they're doing is talking.
Right.
We really need more of that. And it's the same thing, I mean, to talk about my grandkids. When my granddaughter was in nursery school, I know this sounds like I'm really blowing my own horn, but we got called in to go talk to the principal of this daycare, nursery school, whatever it was, because they had a phenomenon. They had a situation that they never ever had to deal with before. Parents were stealing our granddaughter's work, her artwork.
To do what? What were they doing?
They were just stealing it because they loved it.
Oh, wow. Was that
and it
nice?
was the most bizarre thing I had ever heard of. And then her little brother, who's 7 years, and I use that term, it annoys him, but because my brother had an oops baby 17 years later.
Okay.
But he's an oops baby 7 years, just because they thought, well, the daughter was
shop
that
was
was
closed,
it, right?
right?
Yeah, right. So anyway, he was going to this private school, and they were very hands-on. And whenever they did a report, there was an art element to it, and so on and so forth. And it got to the point where they were like, "Oh, your grandfather's an artist, isn't he?" And he's like, "Yeah, what about it?" Because that's another thing. He's really like on the ball, right? What about it? Oh, well, how much did he help you?
Oh, with the art. Okay.
And there was one he did. It was based on a book that they had to read. It was this baby crawling in his onesie and whatever. And I showed him how to make an armature, and I showed him how to pack on the clay. The what's that stuff that dries the fast there? The clay pot, right? And how to paint it. And I showed him how to do it, and then he's doing it, and all of a sudden I saw his hands working that material. And, I had a lot of students. I mean, I didn't teach part-time or whatever, full-time, as I always wanted to do. But I saw his hands going over that sculpture, and I got so choked up I had to run out of the room. I mean, this kid just...
Yeah, he had the stuff.
He just got it.
Yeah.
He just got it. So, but I was teaching the old South Coast Community Network, I think it was called, where they got a bunch of teachers, they paid them like an honorarium, and you did a course that ran 3 nights, 4 nights, 5 nights, and I taught drawing. And I never thought I would experience this. Most of them were adults, they were adult learners, and it was almost like teaching, holding a therapy session with art. So it was almost like art therapy. There were people there who wanted to see if they were as good as they thought they were when they were in secondary, in elementary school, but they were told, put that down. That's foolishness. That's foolishness. And it was like they were a bunch of people with like birds with broken wings, and that was really, really tough to take.
Wow. And so their art confidence was broken, and you needed to refill that cup.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, with my experience, it took shedding that idealism, like, of everything I create is fantastic, in order to actually progress.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, and yes, you can be confident in when you accomplish. I think that's another thing too. Like to complete something, that you can build confidence through that as
accomplishment.
well.
That's a really good word. Yeah. We have a guest that has arrived. Who has a whole? No, you can say. Has a whole another perspective. I will let her introduce herself and spell her name and obviously the name of the organization.
Sure.
So,
I'm so happy to be here.
Welcome.
My name is, thank you. I can't wait to hear more about what you were just saying, too. So my name is Tracy Furtado Chagas. My last name is Furtado Chagas. It's Furtado -Chagas, Chagas. And I'm the executive director and the co-founder of the Dream Out Loud Center, which is going on almost 25 years now. It used to be Brick by Brick, and we work with the Creative Careers Program in publishing, performing, and graphic arts.
okay, and I'm going to have
Very
our
cool.
guests introduce themselves to you, so
great.
you'll know where they're coming from.
Sure. I'm a freelance artist, Roger Andrews, graphic designer, and also educator of young children in the arts.
Oh, wonderful.
My name is Ashlianna Felix. Most people call me Ash. I am an illustrator, graphic designer, and an educator as well.
Oh, wonderful. We need to know you.
I was just going to say, you guys really got to go have a couple of beers after this.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were basically talking about, because the theme of this is kids rule. And we're all instructors here at some level and at some periods in time and such. And I don't think that Dream Out Loud could have gone on for 25 years if there hadn't been this hole in the community. So could you talk to us about that?
Definitely. I was just walking around AHA just before here because I had my daughter. She's 8 years old, and I really wanted to bring her to the clay making, the pottery wheel that the New Bedford Art Museum was doing. So I don't usually get to walk around AHA, but I was also one of the co-founder committee members 25 years ago too. So it kind of like represents a little bit of what that hole in the community was, because they both kind of happened around the same time. I think I can better represent the whole, if you want to call it that, or the lack of opportunity for our youth by talking about, during that time I was in my mid-20s. I had just graduated from UMass Dartmouth. I was a native of Fall River, and I was in the publishing community. I really wanted to work in publishing. I'd already worked in Boston, but it really wasn't connecting to my passion for living home, being home. And I found New Bedford, and I found Spinner Publications, which is a small cultural historical press. And, I found my passion and was able to meet a lot of artists, but there wasn't a lot of community at that time. And we started to do a program with Then Artworks, and they had talked about doing a teen arts coalition. There weren't many programs for teens at that time.
Was this with, Crystal Campbell at Artworks?
Yes, Crystal.
Okay.
She was one of the co-founders,
Yeah.
and Carrie Belisario was one of the first executive directors, and then she was one of the co-founders also of AHA. She and a bunch of other people. If I started naming them, I would forget a lot of them, but they were from like about 12 different organizations in downtown. So her and I started working together, and we both were passionate about the lack of opportunity for ourselves when we were younger, and also the opportunity. So it was that that actual contradiction because, for me, student journalism at Durfee High School was huge. I found, I was able to work in a newspaper. I was able to do community projects. And for Carrie, where she grew up, there were, a lot of different things available. But we couldn't really identify anything here where the students were really creating art. There was the art museum. They did have their children's programs, but something where they could really take part and become and create. So, and a lot just came together. We started to write a grant together, and the first youth were part of New Directions, so they were getting paid to be there. And Paula Benedetti, which was crucial to bringing us all together, she kind of connected the project, paid the students, and at that time, Spinner was teaching cultural history. And honestly, the students didn't care. They didn't want to be there. They didn't want to hear about their community. They didn't like their community. And I understood that feeling because I had felt that growing up and not really understanding my heritage. And, so it was kind of a lack of connection and then opportunity of artists kind of came together. And the youth that were part of it, one day when it's really wild because this student just recently had a fundraiser for the organization and donated their proceeds because they're a very, very, very successful artist, a photographer and videographer, Joel Cordero. He just recently had a huge event and donated money to Dream Out Loud's apprenticeship program because he was one of those first youth that was in this program that honestly didn't like it from the beginning. And then when I said, what do you think about a teen magazine? What do you think about that? And everything instantly changed and he became one of the major illustrators. We work with them and teach them Adobe products. So, just I think the whole was, and I hate to call it a whole because it's assuming that there was a lack. It was just the opportunity that kind of came together of the people who really wanted something. They wanted to make the best out of what everybody has already. And that's what kind of created the synergy that led to the Creative Careers program, which became very successful and attracted a lot of youth. And then AHA, too. I mean, they're both celebrating 25 years, so pretty good.
Great. Tracy, move your microphone. Maybe we can get Kris in there as well. The other, we were just before you arrived. We were talking. Yeah. You want him to go there?
Yeah, I don't mind. I don't mind sharing.
You take a break.
Actually, I have to take a break. I gotta go check on my daughter.
Okay. Well, you can say you gotta go to the bathroom. That's okay.
Yeah, that too.
We'll just let it roll. And we'll get these guys here.
Awesome.
I'll get them caught up. Ash, thanks so much. I think it was a good conversation.
Wonderful meeting you.
Awesome. We'll talk some.
Yes, absolutely.
One of the things we were talking about just before you arrived was when I was working for the Old South Coast Learning Network.
Yes,
Sandria
I remember.
Parsons.
Yes.
I did one of the first adult drawing classes I did. I never expected what was going to happen that happened.
Yeah.
And it was like dealing with broken birds with broken wings. Someone even told me that the reason why they were taking this course was because they loved to draw when they were children. And that was something they thought they could be artists. But some adults, someone in authority told them, what do you want to do that for? You're not going to make any money. Put that down. That's foolishness.
Absolutely.
And they came back and they were scared to death because they thought that maybe for the last 20, 30 years, they were living this lie, that coulda, shoulda, woulda thing.
Right.
And the other thing on the tail end of that, and to show the emotion of these things, is the Swain School of Design had the Saturday morning drawing classes. And there are still people who attended those classes who almost get choked up talking about those classes. to them, it was one of the best things they ever did in their young lives.
Yeah. And I think, just to build on that, and then I want to introduce
Yes.
Kris Motta, our current program director.
Oh, what do you mean? You're going to get rid of them?
No.
Yeah, let's let him introduce himself.
Okay.
Yeah,
And spell your name.
Spell my name?
Yes.
So I'm Kris
Especially
Motta.
you.
It's KrisMotta. And I've been at Dream Out Loud now. I think I'm hitting 8 years. And then I've been the program director for 3. And kind of what you talked about of believing in the creative careers, I left there for a short amount of time, maybe 6 months, to pursue other jobs that were, quote unquote, more financially stable and whatnot, or a little more like traditional. And every time I did that, I'd talk to Tracy and be like, hey, I miss Dream Out Loud. I miss the work that we're doing, being creative, having that outlet for myself and working with the kids. And so every time I keep coming back. So it's cool as an adult, kind of getting that experience from Tracy and from Dream Out Loud does that same thing for me that we do for the kids of hey, you can be creative. You can have this awesome career, and it's not foolish to want that, right? The world needs art, needs your voice, needs all that. So it's really cool to have that own connection to me.
It is not. It's not decoration. It's not keeping idle hands occupied.
No.
There's been this trend over the last few years. Well, it comes and goes, where there are educators, which is almost impossible because it's so MCAS oriented. And, the Europeans, I don't know if you look on social media, the Europeans have been banging on the United States like you wouldn't believe. Our food is crap. They won't allow half the products we consume in their countries. Our educational system they're horrified by. I know when I was living in Portugal, and just around the fall, there was Jumbo. It's Jumbo, but they're Jumbo, okay? And they were contracted to put out the art supplies for the students. And it was like, are you kidding me? It was absolutely phenomenal. So art was an integral part. It wasn't a add-on. It wasn't a cling-on. It wasn't an also. It was part of their education.
Right.
To see patterns, to observe, to be professional observers. And yet,
I don't like to speak in negatives, but because you kind of planted that seed in my mind about what the whole is, and we have to very much focus on the positive energy to try to bring it together, to bring the funding in, to bring the momentum. But you are 100% right that there is a lack of support for individuals in this community a lot. I'm sure, we're going to talk about this community, but not out of, just more out of a lack of understanding. It's, people want to give advice to their children. I remember my parents, blue collar workers, they wanted me to do well. The fact that I wanted to major in English was a little scary, first generation college student. And it was, you really need to take a job that you're going to make a full-time salary, you're going to do well. And I was like, but I'm a writer, I'm an artist. And we wanted to give that back to these individuals. And we quickly saw, and we continue to see, that when you offer support, the artists and the solutions to community problems and to individual problems, they all happen in these ways that are powerful. But there is a lack still of support. Dream Out Loud just won an amazing award that we're so proud of, that we won it from the Massachusetts Nonprofit Network, which is a very respected organization in Boston. And we won an Excellence Award for great outcomes with a small budget. So I've been reflecting on that for a long time. Everybody that works at Dream Out Loud, we work there part-time because that's what we need to. At one point I was a full-time executive director. But the funding, you gain funding and you lose funding so frequently.
Yeah, we're a nonprofit. In fact, we're going to come up on our 1-year anniversary.
Yes, congratulations.
And let me tell you an eye-opening experience.
Yes, and so you move forward so quick. You gain something, and then you're simultaneously, unfortunately, you're usually losing something too.
Yep.
So it's this constant dance of working with funds, and if you receive a $1,000 grant or a $75,000 grant, it almost is the same kind of reporting. So if you look at some of our best institutions and you look at the amount of full-time jobs that they have to function in marketing, in administration, in program development, and you think of all the meetings that go into making something successful. Well, we've been able to streamline and to really work together as a team and build efficiencies. So we're proud that we won this Best Outcome Award, this excellence for Best Outcome on a small budget. But we, in our next 25 years, we want more abundance. And that is lacking in our community, that there is a lot of resources available, but so many of our organizations, and I know this because I've been involved in the community for a long time, we're doing really powerful things, but on such shoestring budgets. So, I think there's so much opportunity to kind of make that expand. And I think there's more attention. People, funders, foundations are looking at New Bedford.
Right. I mean, there has been a renaissance here.
Yes.
And so much so, I mean, I've lived long enough to see the next best bright idea shoot up into the sky, light up the night, and then come crashing down. And okay, next.
Right.
Yeah.
We had so many, this mentality of, I call the silver bullet mentality. Oh, this is going to be it. This is going to be it. But one of the things is, I mean, we had whaling. Then we had textiles. Then we had commercial fishing. And you could throw in the Schmata industry, the apparel industry, because that was bringing in, I mean, Chemise Lacoste and Chemise Izod, and a lot of top brands that people were clamoring for. In Fall River, Huckapoo, which in the 70s was the blouse that they call them tops now, I guess, the shirts, but what women refer to as blouses. Huckapoo was the thing. Okay, so they were all made here. But now it looks like art is that next industry, and you go to colleges and universities and they're selling programs. It's called art management, and there's all kinds of other things like that, right?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
we actually went to, I'm trying to think, I think it was March. Us and a few other organizations with New Bedford Creative, we went to a advocacy day up at the State House, advocating for like the arts and funding and all that good stuff. And it was interesting because one of the speakers talked about how basically the government is realizing how lucrative art is from a financial standpoint. In Massachusetts, it's the top, most lucrative.
Really?
What do you call that? Industry. Thank you. More than anything else, architecture, art is brought in the most money. So I feel like with that being a thing, because I feel like as a country, right, if it's useful and it makes money, usually gets attention. So maybe that helps. And obviously the importance of like the social emotional stuff, right, that we all know because we're all artists, how important that work is. So hopefully they're starting to notice how useful art is and how necessary it is, and more funding gets down here.
What about respect? Because when I moved to Portugal, people, hi, how you doing? What do you do? I'm an artist. You're an artist? Do I know your work? Is it hanging in the museum? Is it in a catalog? Is it here? I'm over here. And I said this like nearly every show I've ever done.
I do love your artwork.
Well, thank you.
Absolutely.
And here, what do you do? I'm an artist. No, you make any money doing that?
Yeah.
There's no respect for the artist.
Yeah.
And we also have this thing where, as to use the Portuguese term, pés descalços, barefooted people, the lower class. We can't afford that stuff. That's for the rich people. So that's part of, it's not just teaching youth how to create art, become invested and involved in it, but also to try to change the culture to accept them and their work as something that is very, very valuable.
Right. And I think the thing that I love teaching and living the most is this, the dance between art and business. Like, in order to allow the innovation to come forward, to create something that's powerful, you have to be able to kind of let down some of those barriers and that might hinder you for success. But at the same time, you have to have achievable deadlines and goals in order to keep the business going. And those two things at any point, that's what we always try to keep in mind. And one of the reasons why I do think that we've been able to attain some success with the artists that work with us is we attach it to, you're a professional right from day one. When the youth come in, you're an artist. You don't want to be here. You want to be on your phone? You can go. That's why it's great to have an after-school program. We try to pay our instructors well as we possibly can. We're always, making sure that we are also paying our youth after they've shown work ethic and dedication. But they learn some really, high level skills in not just what they do with art, and because we work with art and technology, but also that teamwork and communication. And I think that people might not realize how much those soft skills artists actually bring to coming up with solutions in the manner of how we approach things,
Right. And Roger's rejoined us again. So
Great.
I'm going to ask Roger and you guys, Kris and Tracy, can you go to bed at night and know that you have at least one student that has totally surpassed anything you imagined for yourself?
Absolutely.
I mean, it's like, damn. And I'm not jealous. You feel like a proud papa or proud mama, right?
Every semester, especially nowadays, right? Technology is so prevalent. You can learn anything you want on the internet. So I would say, honestly, about half our students come in and like artistically and even some of the skills, they've already surpassed them. I'm not an artist. I don't draw. And they'll come in and they're like, yeah, I know how to do that already. They're animating. They're doing all this crazy stuff because they have that passion. And so it's really cool when they come in. And then it's like, all right, cool. Like I can show you the business side of stuff and help you to like we just talked about how to like have that self-respect and the value of your art. But they come in just so fired up and ready. And then by the time they leave program, we have a couple. One, she made a crazy self-portrait. She painted it. And it's beautiful. And people always come in like, oh, like, how much is it? Like, how long has that been there? Who made it? And I was like, oh, it was a 14-year-old who drew that. And it's just crazy. And it happens all the time. We have another student right now. Her name's Scotty. She's 14. And she writes probably 3 songs every semester. But they're only required 1 from our program. We're like, take your time. We'll help you. We'll record it. And she'll make a song beginning to end, record it, and perform it. And usually makes like 3. And her songwriting is like super deep. And the ideas that she gets out like into the songs. So it's really cool. So like for me, that's what pumps me up. Whenever we have our showcases and can like see how hard they've worked and just like how crazy talented they are. Yeah. I don't know, get jealous. Sometimes I do, I guess, a little bit. But
yeah, because like, wow, it really came easy for them. And I'm gonna ask Roger to answer that same question. But as you were speaking, something else jumped into my mind to ask you about as well is when they come into that classroom. In marketing, when I used to teach marketing at UMass, it's like the product is never the product. Okay, Jay Peterman from the Jay Peterman catalog. Yes, he was a character on the Seinfeld show, if you remember that, if you're old enough to remember. But he was also a real person who had a catalog. It was what they call a Slim Jim. There's a whole story behind that. And the thing that always stuck with me was he said, when will American businesses realize that people want things that make their lives the way they wish they were? So can you, when they walk into the classroom, you always have 1 or 2 that are like, oh yeah, they just gave me the keys to the kingdom.
Yeah. Every semester.
I feel, and I know I do want to jump in with this same thing and then we'll have you answer that question too. But I feel so blessed because of having been teaching for 25 years now in New Bedford and working specifically with artists in different ways. Like, they have transformed my life. I'm still so close to so many of them. And it's because, honestly, you know, I was just talking to a friend of mine. We're going for our doctorate together at Salve, and we were just talking about like curriculum. If you like create a curriculum and then sell it, and just different kind of branding and business, like marketing, and trying to think of different ways to bring in earned income. But, you know, it's like, what's that curriculum, and what do we all share at Dream Out Loud when we bring a teaching artist in? And honestly, it's that they know how to listen to the student, no matter who they are or what skills they have, and just help really to build that confidence and let them know that they to trust themselves, right? So whether I'm teaching English or writing or public speaking, which I'm also teaching at colleges now, or if I'm teaching a youth how to write a poem, you know, it really is like it's the confidence and it's the ability to just listen to them, and it's huge.
Right, you know, and I'm thankful to be in a group of variety of different artists. Right, you said more on the writing side,
Yes.
and on the music side. So I represent the visual art side of it. And to Ron's question, like, there is always some kids that just have the juice.
Yeah.
I call it the juice. It's just there's this innate sort of like spark of talent. Some of it you can cultivate, some of it is inherent. And so I love it when you get those ones that are that have that, but even more so is the ones that have enthusiasm for it, right? And an appreciation for it. I actually gravitate more towards those kids. The ones that are just excited to do it, and whether they're the most visually talented doesn't really matter to me. It's about the ones who really get into it. That's like the extra juice. That's the juice squeezed right from the orange. You know, it's so sweet. Yeah. And I love that. And I'm sure you guys, when you get that real
when you have that enthusiasm and that dedication, and it's really remarkable. And you find it more than you realize.
All right. Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, speaking of enthusiasm, I got my less than enthusiastic daughter right there. I've got to get her on and moving. But so thankful to you, Ron, for inviting me again. I'd love to meet and spend time more with
you guys have to get together.
Yes.
And thanks as always, and have a great conversation. I'll see you guys further.
We would love to invite you and your family to our next student showcase, which
heck yeah.
Is
August 22nd.
August 22nd at 6 p.m.
At 6 p.m. at our space down at the Kilburn.
The Kilburn
Anyone
Mills.
is invited. Yes, we're on the suite 264. And so we're now in the Kilburn Mill, which we've been there for how many years now?
This is our third
30 years. Previous to that, we were in downtown. So it's definitely, a new experience, but it's a new community and it's got a lot of great creative energy.
Sure, awesome. And our drawing workshop is quite literally right up the street. We're on 137? Yeah, 137 Union. We're at the co-creative space. Dina's space.
Yeah, love. We got to plan a field trip for some of our youth too.
Come on Saturday. In fact, we have a summer program. It's digital art. It's all drawing on the iPad.
Nice.
And the kids are digging it. They
that's what we do
loving
too.
the heck out of it. Right?
We know what that is.
You guys know exactly,
we know
right?
What it is.
The technology, like the bridging of the technology and the art.
Yeah.
And so, listen, more than welcome to come by. It's 4 p.m. to 5:30 on Saturdays throughout the entire rest of the summer.
Wonderful.
So just come, stop in and see what we're doing.
Yeah.
And I'm going to share with you some material so we can connect. Because my website and all that stuff's on there. So it's it's Sketchy GO Ichie. If you want to see me see us, sketchygoichie.net. And I'll share some info and hopefully I can get yours. And I really want to connect
and
with you
we're
guys.
dreamoutloudcenter.org, and we do post a
Ron
lot.
sent me your link immediately.
Oh,
He was
great.
like, So I'm just,
and we love to collaborate. I mean, everyone's an independent artist and independent contractors, and we just collaborate with a lot of artists. And you can retain your business name. We believe in building a big community of a lot of different. So
who doesn't love community?
Right.
You're wrong if you don't love community.
It's important.
Yeah, that's right. So again, grateful to you, and looking forward to spending more time with all of you.
Right, thanks so much.
All right, have a good rest of the AHA.
Yeah. Oh,
right?
yeah.
Kids rule.
They do. They do. Waiting for Maya Livramento from Third Eye unlimited. If she can show up, she's watching over at the Abolition Row, the the 5 pillars of hip hop. So she might have gotten tied up there.
Yeah, there's a lot going on outside. We almost had a concert today, but we have this thing. We always have to watch and participate in our concerts. So
I came down like at 5 o'clock so I could get a parking space. And I was lucky, but it was already getting really tough to find a space. I lucked out. So let's wrap this up a lesson until Maya shows up. Again, and it's only from my point of view of being a marketer and a former marketer, former academician, so I was an educator and I was a practitioner. So you tend to look at things with a wry eye kind of thing.
Sure.
And I would tell my students, sometimes you observe things and you got to go take a shower because it's humanity,
Right.
But you're looking for things that work and you're looking for things that don't work. Where do you think, and I asked Roger the magic wand question. It's an old Barbara Walters question that she used to ask.
Getting nervous.
And I'm not going to ask you if you were a tree, what kind of a tree would you be?
I'm also a journalist, so give me a Barbara Walters moment. I'm okay.
And the question is, if I gave you a magic wand and you only had one wish that was loaded into this thing, one wish and no other wish, and you could only apply it towards arts and culture, visual performing arts, whatever. And I'm going to ask both of you separately, what would you do with that magic wand?
You want to go first?
I mean, I just automatically think abundance for all.
That's what I was going to say.
We at Dream Out Loud, we have a secret, and it might be a silly secret, but it's I encourage everyone to do it. We do new moon checks. If you ever heard about writing a check in the new moon.
No, never heard of that.
Yeah, it's supposed to really attract abundance.
Really?
Yeah. And I just think
I just thought it made my beard grow faster.
I don't know. We swear by it. Sometimes you feel like, this, for me, the spiritual is a big part of how I live my life, how I work in my profession. And, I have a deal with myself that I will always be doing work that brings me value emotionally. And then I feel like I'm making a difference in this world. So, I see so many people struggle financially. And I think that there are so many wonderful organizations and businesses and communities. And I think we're all still really, trying to struggle to make ends meet. And we all need abundance for all. So I'm not really sure. I've seen a lot of money come into the city at different points. I've seen a lot of opportunities. And I can't say that I was hopeful many times over and over again. But you can't make a huge difference by giving small amounts of money. We need abundance for all, and trust. There's a huge new initiative and trend in the funding community, and it's trust-based philanthropy. And that means, that you're easier on nonprofits in the reporting area of things. And, grants renew, grants grow. You don't give a grant and then lessen it the next year. That you have to turn youth away if you do that. It's silly to think you can build a sustainable, quote unquote, and I can say this with confidence now because we aren't going on 25 years, when you're working with a community that's mostly 95% low income, you cannot expect this community organization to build a much bigger pot of money working independently through earned income. We need to create resources that we can rely on, that we can, dream more and vision more. So abundance for all, whatever that means for any organization, but that's what I would do with my magic wand.
Yeah, I was actually going to say the same thing. I was going to say money, because the reality is money is a barrier, right, for access to the arts for many people. You need supplies to make art, and I think New Bedford's really good about minimizing that, right? You have a lot of like recycling artists and stuff like that, but it costs money, and to give kids the access, transportation, and the platform to create their art and to get it out there, you need money.
Yeah, I mean, you said two things. One of them is in Rhode Island they have a recycling or repurposing facility specifically for artists.
Really?
So Bordalo would have gone insane in there because he wouldn't have to. It's like one-stop shopping. He could have gotten anything he wanted. So if it's like, call it industrial waste, and I don't mean like sludge and chemicals and such, but there's always byproduct with anything that you manufacture. And that would be great to have that kind of a business, established here.
Right. You have to invest in the people. You have to invest in the reality of I've heard so many times like, oh, organizations can't get a big budget because then they won't know what to do with it because they've been small for so long. It's like, you have no idea. Like what kind of
I've been living in a studio
that?
apartment, and why would I want to go into a 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath
I wouldn't
apartment?
know how to deal with it.
I would be freaked out with all that space, right?
So I just challenge that idea. You can double every single. Well, let me put a specific because honestly, we need specifics, right? Let's double everyone's budget. Let's do that. Let's start there, and then see what happens. And with my magic wand, I think we need to go higher though. I've spent a lot of time with Boston-based nonprofit organizations because in 2018 we won the Social Innovation Forum Award for access to the arts. And all of the nonprofits in my selection, the budgets were 6 times higher. And, these are considered small. So just in comparison, our budget is $150,000. We have over 20, independent contractors that we work with that are teaching, and the programs are free. And, we serve those 3 publishing, performing, and graphic arts. So, we could more than easily double that. And, easily, right?
Yeah.
But so we need to 5 times. We got to.
Well, I mean, it's Jeff and I. Like I said, we're just coming up on our first anniversary of being a nonprofit, and every time we dig deeper into something, we find there's more and more and more and more. And the crux of the matter is, we want to document the legacies of the artists of the South Coast, right? And that includes everybody. And I don't just mean DEI. I mean everybody.
Right.
It's really, really important because Jay Avila from Spinner.
I love Jay.
We're cooking up this plan, and he sent me a 92-page document with all these photographs on it, and it was like the worst thing he could have possibly done, because I'm already like, into the stratosphere already on page 2.
Yeah.
There are artists I never ever even heard of. Not that I know every artist that ever breathes in this town, but it was like, oh my God, to have the opportunity to resurrect these people.
Right. I mean, Spinner, the same thing. Spinner, 5 times the budget. Like what they do and bring to this community, they should not be struggling as much as they can.
I know it's in good hands because Joe's passed the baton on to Jay.
Joe's still working it. We're not getting rid of Joe yet. And Sue,
they'll have to pry his cold fingers from the helm.
But Jay, from day, I worked there when Jay started. Since day one of Jay working. I know Jay since
he was a child. My ex-wife used to babysit him.
He's the best. And Joe has taught me so much. I mean, if it wasn't for Joe, Dream Out Loud wouldn't exist, and a lot of my skills that he helped to foster.
So that's what we've got. We almost need a Congress, to use that term. We need a Congress of all these organizations, because we're all fighting, and
competition.
We're all fighting for the same dollar.
There is competition there, and there shouldn't be. And healthy competition is good, but the resources are so scarce. So it provides this bigger competition. $1,000, $5,000 grants, they help, but try not to limit them. It's like if you get one, you can't get another for another year.
Oh yeah, the MCC grants are like that. I think you're only eligible like for 3 years, and then you're out. You got to sit it out or something like that.
Right. Well, at least with Massachusetts Cultural Council, they do provide operating support, and we're one of their fundees, so we're very thankful. But I know we used to be a funder of Lenny's Acom Fund and a fundee, and we loved them. But it is, you can't apply after so much time. I understand them, and I understand the philosophy because there were so many organizations. But this magic wand that you gave me, and we're artists, right? So we're gonna create the abundance is there. I've met a lot of wealthy individuals that are so generous, and
and we do need. I mean, and art has always been supported by patrons and benefactors.
Yes,
and you do need those people. But I think also too that and AHA is a roaring good example. But I was telling Roger and Ash, I saw this documentary on this is after August Wilson, the phenomenal African American playwright. He did Fences, and I mean that's just one of his, many phenomenal plays that he wrote. They brought this program to high schools across the United States. These kids that participated in the program never had any, they weren't in the drama club, they weren't the top kids.
right.
They were just given this opportunity, almost as a challenge, to memorize a section of one of the plays. And it's like watching The Bachelor. I mean, they would go from that first tier, then whittle it down. I think the final is like 4 of them. Mm-hmm. It was an incredible journey.
Yeah.
And I think, it's always another bright idea, but I think we really need something like that, not for the city, not for the South Coast, but for the youth of the South Coast, because it's not the Academy Award, it's the Oscar. Am I making sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And it's where it's coming from. So people say, well, where do you come from? What do you do? And so on and so forth. And I said, well, we're whales and we're fishing boats. But we're also the place where Frederick Douglass came to freedom in 1838. I mean, and that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Well, and we're full of grit, and we have great traditions and culture, and so many resilient qualities. I had a hard time when I was working with a consultant once, and she was trying to help me create the pitch to bring in more funding, and I was supposed to be creating a representation of our youth, and I could not see our youth as vulnerable and in need of so much, because I saw them as strong. They're very strong. They, we lack funding sometimes, but as far as spirit, as far as intellect, as far as care, our youth are just really, they're gold, right? They're the best, and they have the ability to truly change the world.
Yeah, I think adding on to kind of what we've been talking about this whole time with nonprofits, funders. Something I've noticed, and I've only been doing the back end grant writing type stuff now 3 years, so I'm
He's doing a great job.
But a big thing I've seen is it seems like at some point a lot of people get kind of lost in the showmanship of the nonprofit world, and in general, like the city, right? You can tell what things are for the city and to make the city look good, and what things have like that actual quality, like where it's for the kids, it's for the people. So making sure that we focus on that, anything that we do from Dream Out Loud, it's about the kids and what they're getting out of it and investing in them. Right. We're not investing in Dream Out Loud. You know what I mean? It's not.
It's authenticity.
Right.
Yeah, authenticity. Exactly. I'm actually studying authenticity. I think I'm really intrigued by the actions, right? That how you can decide what is authentic or not. And even journalism, it's like a huge thing that in writing, like how, and especially in an age of AI, right? How you can decipher authenticity. And with our youth, you know, if people came to them and needed a solution created, you know, they would spend that time debating it, thinking about it, and coming up with some of like the most amazing solutions, where usually they're not brought into the conversation or they're not allowed to express their negativity. And it's like, no, we need to hear your negativity. We want to hear your negativity.
We want to hear your pain. We want to feel your pain.
We want to feel your pain.
You know, all art is expression. And that comes with the thorny, brambly, sharp, you know, warm, fuzzy, squishy. It's the whole thing. We're going to have to start bringing this down to the end.
Sure.
So I'm going to give you guys the opportunity. You made a really good point. I thought of another point because of something you said. Now I can't remember for the life of me what the first point was. So it doesn't matter because that's just how my brain goes. But to wrap this up, you know, to close out the kids rule, AHA Kids rule, what suggestions do you have for parents whose child is leaning that way, to use that term?
Yeah. I think the most important thing, again, this whole conversation is revolved around it, but it's seeing the value of each kid as an individual, right? Their ideas, their experiences, all these different things. Every person from childhood into adulthood has that. And so supporting that and seeing that and nurturing that. And so if that's art or if that's music, whatever career path they're choosing or expression they're choosing, supporting that and, you know, trying to make sure that they have access to the tools they need, bringing them to places like Dream Out Loud or Third Eye or those other nonprofits that, you know, give access to that, and really giving them that foundation to do that, because that's going to make them happier and it's going to make ripples. You know, kids are powerful people. They're, you know,
and real quick, because you're one of those people that when you talk, it springs things in my head, pushes buttons in my head. We talk about authenticity. But thinking about Third Eye now, and I remember back in the Tierney administration where gang leaders, to use that term, wanted to approach the mayor about public art, and she did not want to legitimize them.
Right.
And now we have this legitimization of public art, and, you know, murals, urban art, whatever you know you want to tag it with. So we have authenticity, we have legitimization, we have access. What else do we have, Tracy?
Well, I was just going to think the answer to your question to the parents, you know, is what a gift. If your child is showing an artistic quality, just realize, oh my God, don't diminish their light, let their light shine. And, you know, something that Kris also said is really don't ever diminish the idea that they need collaboration. Like, one youth can be involved with all organizations, while we may be competing for funds on a different level, just, you know, because we're all trying to continue to sustain ourselves, that all our youth can be in part of many things. And, you know, going back to Joel Cordero, who just recently had that fundraiser with his photography, he was talking to me about it, and he said, you know, I was part of all these organizations. That's what helped me to not get caught in these negative, it took me out of those negative things. And, you know, so it's important to understand that our youth need us. They need more access, right? And so what were the words? It was access. What was the other one? Did he just say?
Access, authenticity,
legitimacy.
Yep. And I mean, hope. Hope is always a hope for future, because if you have hope, then you can do all things, really. You can withstand all negative pressures. And so even if you encourage your child, you know, that in the littlest bit of your child will keep that flame for art burning.
It's also footsteps, because the upcoming generation sees those footsteps and they know somebody passed by there. That they don't have to. They don't have to trailblaze. They just have to follow in those footsteps.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's pretty profound.
No. And that's why, I lived in Portugal myself for a month of time at one point, and I love seeing your artwork. I love, hearing you talk about living in Portugal, and, it inspires so much too. So thank you for having footsteps that, bring us together.
And we will eventually get a collaboration going. I mean, every time we try to write a certain grant or whatever, people just don't get what it is we're trying to put out there.
Yeah.
And again, there's only so much stock in a soup. They can't just keep adding another cup and watering it down.
Well, that's the abundance, and you have to realize too, a lot of the foundations are also nonprofits, right? So they're also competing for funds with us.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And the city, the Invest in Kids program, they fund us. They have their own programs. Like we're all because we're working together towards a joint mission. So it's part of the understanding of because I'll call. Why did we get denied? I mean, so many people. At one point, I didn't do that, but then when I see certain funding coming in specifically for our mission, and I see the success of our youth and the outcomes and, and the struggle still, I make it a point. Like, let's just hear why. And sometimes the honest answer is just that, what you said. There's just too many.
And on that note, we're going to close this out, but I think we ought to talk about doing a podcast series on some of the successes that you've had and have those young people.
Yeah, we want the young people
and
here.
talk about their journey.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Okay. Yeah, thank you so much.
Excellent. All right, folks, thank you so much. This is Ron Fortier, the host of the South Coast Artist Index podcast. We're live at the Play Arcade. That's why it sounds like complete pandemonium and cacophony.
In the headphones, too.
Exactly, in the headphones as well. So with that in mind, thanks so much, and see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
We'll see you next week for another episode of the South Coast Artist Index podcast. To learn more about the South Coast Artist Index, visit theartistindex.com. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.